High fantasy games always have fun, unique races, from the classic human all the way to the horned big cat with 4 ears. In this video, we will be discussing the lore about every race in Guild Wars 2. I will be focusing on the 5 playable races of the game because there are way too many in total to fit in just one video. We will cover what they are, their culture, and maybe a brief history about them. We have humans, charr, norn, asura, and sylvari. Let's start things off with the humans. The humans are one of Tyria's most widespread races. Physically, they are exactly like us, just regular humans, although their origins are somewhat mysterious. They are not native to the world of Tyria. They were originally brought to Tyria by their gods from some other mysterious realm. Not much is known about that human home realm other than the fact that it was unsuitable for them to live. With the help of their gods, they would spread out all across Tyria, establish kingdoms, and become the strongest race. Modern human society is centered around the kingdom of Kryta. Kryta is considered the last great kingdom of humanity. All other kingdoms have fallen, with maybe the exception of Cantha, although I'll talk about that in a moment. Kryta is ruled by Queen Jenna. She is a descendant of King Doric, who was the first king of united humanity. There is a very clear class system among the humans. You've got nobles, commoners, farmers, and peasants, along with military factions like the Seraph, Ministry Guard, and Shining Blade. Human culture can vary depending on the region, but the one constant is their devotion to the 6 gods. Humans have always worshipped 6 divine beings, simply referred to as the 6. I have a video that's focused on the gods specifically, so if you want to know more about them in detail, you can watch that next. The gods are Dwayna, Balthazar, Melandru, Lissa, Grenth, and Cormyr. Each god has a different domain and represents different virtues and ideals. They also have very different personalities. The gods used to live on Tyria with the humans, but after causing irreversible damage to the world, they decided to leave Tyria behind in an event known as the Exodus of the Gods. All throughout human history, there have been 5 main kingdoms: Or, Alona, Ascalon, Cantha, and Kryta. These were all established as part of a conquest led by Balthazar to claim the land of Tyria for the humans. This was probably the most problematic thing the humans ever did, since all of the native races would be displaced by them. However, over time, these kingdoms would fall on hard times, suffering things like war, famine, disease, natural disasters, or even sabotage from within their own walls. Or was the kingdom of the gods. When the gods still lived on Tyria, they lived on Or. However, during an invasion from the Charr, Or would be destroyed from within. Vizier Kilbron would cast a forbidden magic ritual that would destroy the land of Or and cause it to sink into the sea, in an event known as the Cataclysm. Ilona was a desert nation ruled by a dynasty of primeval kings. They were very wealthy, but they would begin to fall apart after being stricken with famine and plague. Ascalon was formed on land belonging to the Charr, so naturally the Charr would begin to fight back against the humans. The Charr would burn Ascalon to the ground, and to make things worse, the Ascalonian king Adalbern would curse the land with his magical foe fire, leaving Ascalon a barren wasteland. Cantha was far across the sea, isolated from the other kingdoms. However, they too had their problems. An assassin named Shiro Tegachi would murder the Canthan emperor. This would trigger a chain of events causing natural disasters that would turn the forest into stone and the sea into solid jade. However, Cantha would survive and prosper. During the End of Dragon's story, we would learn that Cantha has actually been thriving and became much more advanced than the other kingdoms. The Elder Dragon Suwan had been helping them this entire time. It might be debatable if they would have survived and thrived the way they did without her help, but nevertheless, they did. Finally, Kryta. Even though it remains as the last great kingdom, it was not without its troubles, like civil war and false gods. This is a long and complicated story, but I'll keep it short. Krita used to be ruled by a faction called the White Mantle, who worshipped a race called the Mursat. The Mursat presented themselves to the White Mantle as gods, but this was false. The Mursat used the White Mantle to enslave humanity, but over time a rebellion would overthrow the White Mantle and the Mursat would have to go into hiding. The human race in Guild Wars 2 seems to be defined by their resilience and ability to overcome these struggles and hardships. They once ruled massive empires with power unmatched. Even though today it's all gone, the human spirit remains strong. The Charr are a race of feline beasts known for their strength and savagery, standing much taller than the average human. They've got horns, claws, sharp teeth, and 4 ears. Apparently the 4 ears are for hearing a wide variety of high and low frequency sound waves, although I don't know if that's actually being confirmed lore or if that's more of just a fan theory thing. One thing I think is interesting about the Charr is they prefer not to rely on magic or spirituality. They prefer to rely on physical strength and practical tools. This is generally speaking, of course. You'll still find plenty of magic users among the Charr. The Charr are arguably one of the biggest innovators when it comes to engineering. They've created things like massive siege engines, weaponry, firearms, tanks. The reason for that is their whole culture revolves around their military. The Charr society is divided into 4 separate legions. The legions are Blood, Iron, Ash, and Flame, although Flame is off on their own and not united with the others. I'll explain why in a moment. Blood is focused on frontline fighting, the brute force warriors. Iron specializes in engineering, putting to use all of those innovations that I mentioned. Ash is all about stealth and spying. Any kind of covert operations, that's their thing. Flame focuses on magic and rituals, which the Charr are generally not known for. The rest of the legions are a little wary of Flame because of this. Even though the legions have these themes they focus on, it's still possible to find Charr of any archetype in any legion. The legions are broken up into individual warbands that will operate together and complete missions handed down to them by leadership. The warband is very important to the Charr. Most Charr consider their warband to be their family. The Charr will form these warbands at a very young age and most of the time stay with them for their whole life. Warband formation happens in what's called the Farrar, a training grounds for young Charr where they'll be taught the ways of their legion and undergo extreme training every day. Charr parents will usually hand off their cub to the Farrar as soon as the cub is able to walk on their own. So growing up without any family other than your warband is very common. The warband is also where a Charr will get their surname. The warband will pick something that they identify with and choose their surname based on that. For example, Steel Warband includes Ryland's Steel Catcher, Cinder's Steel Temper, Vision's Steel Shot, and so forth. Apart from the warband structure, the legions do have ranks within them, such as Legionnaire, Centurion, Tribune, and Imperator, who is the leader. Any Charr that happens to leave the legions or be without a warband for whatever reason will be given the title of Gladium. Gladium is considered a dishonor among the Charr. As a Gladium, Charr can seek to join a new warband to redeem themselves, or sometimes they might decide to move on from the legions and find purpose elsewhere, joining factions like the Vigil, the Lion Guard, or the Astral Ward. Among the Charr, there is one rank that stands higher above all others, the Con-ur. However, in all of Charr history, there has only ever been one true Con-ur. To become Con-ur, one must claim the Claw of the Con-ur, which is a sacred Charr artifact weapon. They must prove their strength, valor, and leadership by completing great deeds. And perhaps the most challenging of all other legions must be united under this person's leadership. The original Con-ur was the only Charr to ever fill this criteria. All other Charr were united under his leadership. he would have 4 cubs that would each go on to found one of the legions. The charr were originally separated into many different small tribes. It wasn't until the charr united them all that they came together and joined these legions. However, the charr would eventually be assassinated, leading to the charr becoming divided, since all the legions began fighting amongst each other as to who should take over the rule. And this came at a really bad time, since the humans were amassing an army to invade and attack the charr land in Ascalon. The Flame Legion would find a way to force all other legions to follow them, with power that they received from worshipping the Titans as gods. The Flame Legion shamans deceived the rest of the charr into thinking that worshipping the Titans was their secret to regaining their power and their land. Under the Flame Legion, the charr would cause this searing, burning the land of Ascalon to the ground. They would strip away the rights from female charr after a female challenged their leadership. They would send countless charr to their deaths after several military blunders. The Flame Legion would eventually be taken down by 2 charr, Pyre Fearshot and Kala Scorchrazor. Pyre witnessed the Titans be killed by a group of mortals, so he knew that the Titans were false gods. He would go on to spread this truth among the charr, and many charr would begin to doubt the Flame Legion's leadership. Kala, who was Pyre's granddaughter, would actually start and lead the rebellion against the Flame Legion. She would train many female charr in secret and amass an army of charr who all opposed the Flame Legion shamans. Eventually, Kala would defeat the Flame Legion Imperator, but die in the process. After this event, the Flame Legion would be disgraced and shunned from the other legions. In the modern day, the charr have made peace and alliances with the other races, and the legions are somewhat united. They cooperate with each other, but they still have their differences. The Norn are a race of humanoids from the far northern regions of Tyria. Physically, they look very similar to humans, but bigger. The average height of a Norn is around 9 feet tall, and I'm sure they have a very high average weight with all that muscle mass. Norn can generate extreme body heat with physical activity, making life in these freezing mountain regions no problem. They also have the innate ability to transform their body into that of an animal in what's called spirit form. Spirit form is considered a blessing from the spirits of the wild. When they transform, they will take on the appearance of whatever spirit they channel, but they can only do so for a short time. Norn society isn't built around kings and queens or politicians. Instead, communities are built based off of respect, reputation, and personal accomplishment. Personal accomplishment and respect is usually how the Norns select a leader. Leaders among the Norn are usually those with legendary accomplishments that the others respect most. However, Norn don't necessarily take orders from their leaders. They will still act based on their own personal interests. However, they respect the wisdom and guidance from their leaders. The biggest part of Norn culture is the spirits of the wild. The Norn have a deep connection to the wilderness and the world around them, so these spirits act as their connection to the land. The spirits of the wild are different from the usual religion involving worship. The Norn hold them in high regard, but they don't worship them. They're not gods, they're more like spiritual guides. The Norn have shamans that commune with the spirits on a much deeper level than the average person, and then pass on their guidance to the other Norn. Although the spirits do have power that they can bestow upon the Norn, it's very rare that they will interact with a Norn directly. There are many spirits that all represent different animals and different virtues and ideals. They're separated into major spirits and lesser spirits. The majors are bear, wolf, raven, and snow leopard. The Norn will hold a great deal of respect for all the spirits, but they usually have one spirit that they will favor a bit more than the others. There's not a whole lot of history that's known about the Norn prior to their initial appearance in the Guild Wars games. The Coden do have a theory about the Norn that they are descendant from a rogue group of Coden that defied their god and became what they are today. But this theory isn't considered to be true. It's heavily disputed by scholars and historians. They've always been known to be a nomadic people living in the far northern regions of Tyria as hunters and gatherers. The main point in Norn history that shaped them into who they are today was the Norn's battle with the ice dragon Jormag. Jormag forced the Norn to travel south after overwhelming them with a deadly icy storm. A Norn warrior named Asgir Dragonrender would slay Jormag's champion Frostfang and then cut a fang out of Jormag's mouth. Dragonrender decided that the fight against Jormag was too risky. Far too many Norn would die in the process, so instead, he led his people south to where they live now. The legends say that if any Norn can damage the Fang of Jormag, then it's time to rally the Norn and reclaim their lost homeland in the north. We just talked about the big and tall people, now let's talk about the small people, the Asura. Asura are a highly intelligent race, standing only about 3 to 4 feet tall. What they may lack in physical prowess, they more than make up for intellectually. The Asura are without a doubt the smartest race on Tyria. Their engineering, technology, and overall understanding of the world is unmatched. The Asura have very large ears and eyes. This is likely due to their past of being a subterranean race. While they are native to the world of Tyria, they're technically native to the far underground depths of Tyria. There is evidence of a potential sub-race of Asura that lived on the surface. However, as far as I know, there isn't much known about them other than the fact that they may have existed, so I'm not going to talk about them. The Asura value intelligence and intellectual superiority above all else. To them, intelligence is the ultimate measure of self-worth. This focus on intelligence can, at times, make them come across as rude and arrogant, especially toward other races, which can cause conflict. Most Asura will dedicate their life into researching one specific topic with the intention of becoming the world's foremost authority on that topic. They will be very protective of their research, sometimes not even letting their crewmates know the full details about their research. The Asura society is generally pretty free. Mainstream Asura are broken up into different colleges, which are further separated into research crews. A crew will be led by whoever had the initial idea for the research project. They will then recruit or hire the others to join them. This is where some politics can come into play, since Asura are usually eager to join the crew working on some high-profile project. But if you don't have an impressive resume, so to speak, you likely won't get selected to join those projects. Or you might also have difficulty recruiting for your own project. The colleges are dynamics, statics, and synergetics. They each have different methods and ways of interpreting and understanding results. The colleges do have a governing body called the Arcane Council. The Arcane Council oversees all research that's conducted within their jurisdiction. However, we have witnessed many times when Asura will act against the Council's wishes or even beyond their knowledge, so it seems like a lot of Asura don't always follow the wishes of their governing body. The one driving force behind all of this research is usually the eternal alchemy. The eternal alchemy can be thought of as the religion of the Asura, but I use the word religion very loosely. The eternal alchemy is more of a guiding ideology that the Asura will follow, similar to a scientific principle. It's the teaching that all things in existence are interconnected in some way and part of a much larger grand design. A lot of research conducted by the Asura will be done so with the intention of learning something's place within the alchemy, or just deepening their understanding of the alchemy as a whole. Probably one of the most impactful events in Asura history was their arrival to the surface world of Tyria. Like I said before, they used to be a subterranean race. They built massive cities and thrived underground for a very long time. However, deep underground, the elder dragon Primordius was in slumber. When he began to rouse, he summoned an army of minions that overwhelmed the Asura. Primordius would destroy their old capital city. The depths of Tyria were no longer safe, and the Asura were forced to evacuate to the surface for safety. Of course, with how smart they are, they adapted to life on the surface very quickly and established themselves as one of the world's superpowers. Since then, they have made alliances with the other races, helping them, offering them their technology like waypoints, gates, or golems. The last race is a very unique one, and the youngest race, the Sylvari. They are a race of sentient plant people. Literally, their bodies are made of organic plant life. The body of a Sylvari closely resembles that of a human, but they have flowers and leaves for hair, their flesh is hardened bark, and they do have a skeleton of super hardened wood. Sylvari can photosynthesize for nutrition, but they prefer to eat and drink like other races do. Sylvari are not necessarily born per se, more accurately they are grown and sprouted from the pale tree, which is a massive magical sentient tree that towers over the region. The pale tree was planted and nurtured by a human named Ronan and a centaur named Ventari. The two of them were trying to escape the violence they saw in the world, and they found peace in tending to the pale tree. Since all Sylvari come from the pale tree, some of them consider those they awakened with to be siblings or cousins, and they all consider the pale tree to be their mother. Now, it is possible for Sylvari to sprout somewhere other than the pale tree, but it's an extreme rarity. As far as I know, there's only been one confirmed case that we know of. When the Sylvari are about to awaken, they will experience something called the Dream of Dreams. While in this dream, they will experience numerous memories from all Sylvari. They'll learn a lot about the world, and the pale tree will teach them the teachings of Ventari. Ventari was very wise, and he would inscribe a stone tablet with his teachings. The pale tree would use these teachings as the basis for Sylvari society. Things like respect, perseverance, ambition, and acceptance. The last part about the dream is the Wild Hunt. This is a personal quest a Sylvari might find for themselves. Some Sylvari will see hints for this Wild Hunt while in the dream, while others won't see the hints until awakening, and others may never find their Wild Hunt. There also exists a dark part of the dream called the Nightmare. It's uncommon that a Sylvari will see the Nightmare, but when they do, they will be exposed to all of the brutal, harsh realities of the world. It often makes a Sylvari become very cynical or even evil, causing harm against other Sylvari and even the pale tree. One thing that's important to note about the dream that I might have glossed over: just because the dream has access to all memories of the Sylvari doesn't mean a Sylvari is going to see everything. The way it's being described to me, in the way that I think makes the most sense, is the dream is like a well full of water, but you only get one bucket to scoop out water, and that is the only water you're allowed to look at. Sylvari society is led by the pale tree. She will teach them and guide them and encourage them, but when she can't, her firstborn will. The firstborn Sylvari are literally that, the first Sylvari to be born. This automatically makes them the most experienced and wise of the Sylvari. So they use this position to guide and teach the others the same way that their mother does. The Sylvari are a very curious race. They're so young and still trying to figure out their place in the world. When I say they're the youngest race, I really do mean that. They are by a significant margin. If I am understanding the Guild Wars timeline correctly, they only initially appeared in Tyria approximately 25 years before the events of Guild Wars 2 begin, which is interesting to think about. Their entire race is younger than some of the cities built by others. So with that, I think that'll bring our lore discussion about the races to a close. I'm curious to know which race is your favorite and why. Me personally, I don't think I could pick just one. I like the Charr, I really like the Norn, and I think the Sylvari are really cool as well. What do you think? But that will be all for this video. Thank you very much for watching, especially if you made it all the way here to the end. Please remember to like, subscribe, become a member if you're so inclined, or just watch another video. I'm sure one is going to pop up here on screen any moment. But that'll be all from me. Thanks for watching. Goodbye for now.